Hi, and welcome to another episode of Glimpses of a Glorious Past, an informal history of the Lawrence School Lovedale. In the last few episodes, we started a series called The Landmarks of Lovedale. Our aim was to capture memories of landmarks that were an integral part of our school days, which we fondly remember till this day. After an episode on school's clock tower and the Lovedale railway station, today's is about school cemetery, known far and wide simply as SEB. This place fascinated and perhaps continues to fascinate generations of Lawrencians. Innumerable stories about this corner of school's sprawling estate. Some may be true, while others may be flights of the fertile imagination of schoolboys. Be that as it may, there is still a little doubt that SEM remains to this day a blend of serenity and mystery, characterized by an unmatched eloquent silence.
Before they left Lovedale to set sail back to Britain in 1927, there was a sad but inevitable task that weighed heavily on the minds of the school's band instructor, Sergeant James Muddle and his family. It was to visit the school cemetery to bid farewell to their young son James, who had been buried there on March 31st, 1917, aged just 5. In those days, many young children fell prey to disease. A study of the burial records in the Lovedale Cemetery from July 30th, 1869 to June 2nd, 1899 showed that 55 out of the first 65 burials were of children below the age of 15. The majority of them were less than 10 years of age. However, by 1920 onwards, the age of the majority of those buried had gone up to well above 40, with the oldest being 89. We believe the oldest person was drill instructor Ambrose Perkins, excuse me, buried in SEM on December 31, 1917. He was the right-hand man of the principal, the Reverend Dane, in the 1880s. Over the decades, several of those who managed the school's affairs passed away in harness, so to speak, and were buried in the SEM. The first was Mr. G.W. Armstrong, who was the headmaster for nearly 30 years till he died aged 54 on February 19, 1890. The second was the Reverend August W. Atkinson, who was the principal from 1891 till he died aged 69 on May 10, 1907. The third was the Reverend Cecil Berners Hall, who was principal from 1937 till he passed away on February 17, 1943. Interestingly, Sergeant Ambrose Perkins was joined in the SEM by an illustrious successor. He was another Sergeant Major, E.J. Saji Nichols, who was the right-hand man of successive principals from 1936 till he passed away and was buried in the SEM on August 30th, 1953.
OL Wing Commander Joseph Thomas, a Raveley in 1957, recalls that in his time at Lovedale, the reigning ghost, as it were, was that of Reverend Atkinson. Atky's ghost was a common sight in school those days. Closer to our times, some of our senior OLs recall the funerals of Mr. J.C. William Sabapathy when he passed away in 1952 and that of Sergeant Major E.J. Nichols when he passed away in 1953. These events were spoken about by OLs Paul Sabapathy, CVO, and Kevin Phillips in earlier episodes of Glimpses. Viju Parameshwar Nilgiri, 1968, and a former president of the OLA from 2003 to 2006, recalls SEM from his school days.
Our exposure to the cemetery when we were in school varied with age. When we were in prep school till standard 4, we were not allowed to walk beyond prep school. So my entire exposure to cemetery came from riding. One of the routes that we took while riding was past junior school and past the stables to SEM, and then around SEM, going either left or right and coming back around it. Unfortunately, these days I don't see a path going around SEM. Thereafter, once we came to junior school in the 5th standard, SEM was one of the favorite skinning ups. Run to SEM and report to me by 5:30 in the morning, for example. It was also, the area that we often strolled to, and when we wanted to make switches for when we left school going on the train, the favorite place to cut little branches of broom was from the road going to SEM. I must say that SEM was always a place that we saw as a slightly wild place, but didn't bother looking at the tombstones and those who were buried inside too closely. Later, of course, it was very much part of the cross-country route, regardless of whether you were a junior, inter or senior. In one form or the other, you ran either from SEM or to and around SEM and down One Man's Path, Smith's Cave, etc. to get to Grass Pitch. So SEM was always an important, in different ways, place for all of us. I must say that over the last 20 years, I found it rather disappointing to walk around SEM. Relatively deforested, a lot of chickens running around from the nearby villages and so on.
As the years went by, SEM got moved into the background. By the time the Raj came to an end, SEM was relegated to just another place on campus. It was haunted, pun intended, by perpetually hungry schoolboys who went there on the hunt for hill guavas and edible or anything remotely edible like berries or boys' school bananas. Some went for bird nesting and others to sneak a smoke. The overall upkeep for the cemetery fell to the wayside. Soon it was rather unkempt, with an air of cloying decay. Next, we hear from two OLs who were deeply involved in the cemetery restoration project.
The school cemetery is an important and integral part of the school's heritage and history. The earliest recorded burial in the cemetery was in 1869. Until 1983, there have been over 150 recorded burials. Those buried here are mainly the former staff of the school and their families. The SEM, as we like to call it, is as much an icon of the school as is the clock tower or the 67 steps. Many of you would have gone to the cemetery in the dead of night as a dare or for a quiet smoke, and many of us have a deep attachment to it. For many years, a large number of OLs have been concerned about the neglected state of the cemetery caused by nature and decay, and sadly, a few instances of vandalism. Many of the graves were damaged, and some of the inscriptions had faded over time. The compound wall of the cemetery had been damaged and broken in many places. In 2017, the OLA, under the then President, Rukmani Reddy Krishnan, undertook a project to restore the school cemetery, and a small committee of OLs were formed to oversee the project, and I was privileged to be part of that committee. The OLA also made an appeal for funding to the British Association for Cemeteries in South Asia, BACSA. A representative of BACSA visited the school and the cemetery in early 2017 and committed ₹4 lakhs for the project. Apart from the BACSA contribution and a commitment from the school to fund and repair the rebuilding of the cemetery compound wall, all the funds for the project were raised from OLs, with the batch of 1982 making a significant contribution. Preliminary work began in mid-2017 with the appointment of Ravi Gundurao, a heritage architect from Mysore, as the project consultant. Mr. Gundurao only works on the restoration of heritage buildings, memorials and structures. He was a consultant for the restoration of the Garrison Cemetery in Srirangapatnam and the British Cemetery in Hyderabad. He submitted a detailed project report which was studied and approved by the OL committee. Mr. Gundarao and his team spent a few days at school preparing a detailed project plan for the restoration of the individual graves, repair of the compound wall, landscaping of the area, and a suitable signboard at the entrance showing the location and details of each grave. By December 2017, Jeernodar Conservators, a Mumbai-based firm specializing in restoration, was appointed as the contractors. Between December 2017 and May 2018, we had a team of around 40 skilled stone masons from Jharkhand and marble sculptors from Rajasthan, plus other workmen working on the site. The cemetery arranged for the accommodation of these workmen at a private residence near the Lovedale station. Around 150 graves and tombs were repaired and restored, and the damaged marble statue and works were repaired, including the iconic angel, which marked the tomb of the wife of the former headmaster, Mr. Padfield. What was particularly gratifying was our learnings about restoration. Mr. Gundarao was insistent on the use of original material to the extent possible. For example, the compound wall, which was built more than 100 years ago, was built mainly using brick and lime mortar. Lime mortar is not easily available, and it took us some time to locate a source near Velankani in Tamil Nadu for the lime mortar. This obviously added to the cost of the project. The cost of the entire restoration came to about Rs 32 lakhs, which was slightly over the original estimate. However, the reaction of the OLs and the others who have visited the restored cemetery has more than justified the cost and the efforts. Particularly gratifying was the comment of Ms. Philida Purvis, the Baxter representative for South Asia, when she visited the cemetery in late 2018. And I'd like to quote what she said. "We were enormously impressed with what has been achieved there already, and with the hard work and incredible attention to detail of the team running the restoration project. I really do believe that it will end up being one of the best cared for historic European cemeteries in India. The school is maintaining the cemetery by doing a regular cleanup of the undergrowth and minor repairs, for which we are grateful to the Board of Governors, the headmaster, the bursar and his team. In fact, I just learned that there is now a plan to tar the road leading from the stables to the cemetery, which was earlier just a mud road." When the OLA committee took up this project and the challenge to raise funds and to complete the restoration before Founders 2018, our inspiration was the school motto, "Never give in." And this will continue to motivate us to preserve the cemetery as a lodestone of a restoration project.
In 2017, I was elected president of the OLA, and the first immediate request came from OLs of the class of 1956-57. Do something about the cemetery, they said. The other OLs joined the chorus for the restoration of SEM. I truly believed that this was a project close to our hearts and must be taken forward. I wrote to OLs on Google Groups and asked for help. I got lucky. Zarir Batliwala, class of 1965, volunteered to be a part of the project. I could not have asked for a better person to share this responsibility with me. It was a huge responsibility. We had to find the money and most of all, make a good enough case for the board of directors and the school authorities. Once we passed that hurdle, we found the late Bala ever willing to oversee the project. After talking to a couple of architects, we zeroed in on Gundarao, who was the perfect choice. Zarir coordinated the work on the cemetery and I coordinated with the school. We both raised funds. we had our moments of concern and anxiety. Several trips to Lovedale and a lot of correspondence eventually saw SEM back in all its glory. I have heard OL say that besides going to SEM for nefarious activities, they also found it peaceful to sit under those magnificent trees and study. No matter what the project, every OLA team that takes over from the last should promise to continue and preserve and carry on the good work of their predecessors.
Remember the opening stanza of that beautiful poem by Robert Frost, In a Disguised Graveyard? The living come with grassy tread to read the gravestones on the hill. The graveyard draws the living still, but never any more the dead. And with this, we come to the end of another episode of Glimpses of a Glorious Past, an informal history of the Lawrence School Lovedale. Thank you. If you would like to contribute to Team Glimpses in any way, please send an email to olalovedale@gmail.com with the subject line for Team Glimpses.